other joke was that our state flower is mildew because it rains so much.
And so you might just accidentally push yourself in the wrong direction a little bit, and then it's like, I'm going to pay for it the next day.
There's no guarantee whether we'll do it.
But I was just like chilling. I look over and I was like, oh, hello, vagina.
Keep that compass pointed, true north to what you believe.
Definitely don't go to school.
Go to rock and roll school.
It's kind of crazy, but
I don't remember this.
Me neither.
But when it comes to write lyrics, I really, it's a pain in the ass for me,
Wow, this is what I want to listen to during my whole life.
Did you really bring that up? That was a private conversation.
But I hope people keep thinking that I'm really relaxed while I'm playing and do not realize when I'm playing the difficult parts of the song.
Those things are always interesting just because I'm so scattered.
Polka metal can be interesting.
Polka metal, yes. I like it.
It's a microphone. What am I supposed to do with this? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I know who to sue.
Yeah.
It was that being told I can't and I shouldn't made me want to do it.
And I'm really hopeful that that's not possible.
I want to be in their presence, so I conduct my life in a way that I hope that they want to be in my presence as well.
Keep touching. Little touches, just get it. Step back. Jab. 1, 2. 1, 2. Yeah. Now go under. Yup. Yup. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Under. Yup. Yup. Break. Double it.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday, Hump Day, the 23rd of June, 2021. And some really quick housekeeping before we get to the interview this afternoon. At 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time today, Sydney Sherwood is coming back to talk about her upcoming project. She's a talented young singer-songwriter who's been on 3 times so far. And I know she's got some new music that's dropping today. So we're going to talk about all that and get into her future projects. And then tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Sonia Anubis from Crypta over in the Netherlands is going to be joining us, who's a fantastic guitar player. And their album just dropped 2 weeks ago. So I'm looking forward to talking to her. If you want to know what I'm up to, you can follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to my channel. We're getting very, very close to that magical number of 1,000 subscribers. If you want to know what's coming up, you can hit the little notification bell, but be aware that's going to put a lot of things into your inbox. So if you just want to know what's going on in general, hit the subscription button. That's always a great help to me. And if you're over on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me there, I would greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, my guest today is a world champion boxer, advocate for social justice, and actor, among other commemorable skill sets. She is the star of the film Catch the Fair One, which had its world premiere at this year's Tribeca Festival. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Kali Reis.
Sure. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing really good. How are you, Kali?
Very good, very good.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I can't wait to start talking to you about the film and your career and everything else that we can in about 30 minutes.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. I appreciate you watching it, number one.
I'll be completely honest, as somebody that, so Tribeca has been my 4th film festival in a row. So it's been since every month there's been a different film festival for me, which has really been a blessing because of it being, having the virtual option. But I don't look at, the hot list and, these kind of things. You must watch these things through Tribeca, and they come into your inbox every single day. I look through the films and think, well, what's interesting to me? And when I was looking through the synopsis about this film, I knew there was something that I wanted to check out. And I was so glad that I did because it's so good. So,
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so
It's not a typical film, you know.
you're very true. And as I was mentioning to some other folks, that your professional boxing background is more of like just a piece of this. It's not really what the story is about. It's about something completely different, and some very serious topics go on in this film. So without giving too many spoilers away or anything like that, let's kind of go back to the beginning of this. How did you get involved with this film?
Well, first it started back in 2017. It actually started with a DM, to be honest with you. Director Joseph GordonLevitt, now one of my very, very good friends. He slid on my DM. As simple as cliche as it sounds, he already had put out his first feature film, Manos Sucios and Tribeca, in 2014. He has done tons of TV directing as well, but he found me on social media via a mutual friend that we both had through a boxing gym. He just had started getting into boxing. So he reached into my DM. He said, "Hey, I'm Joseph, yada, yada, yada. I'm wondering if you'd ever considered acting. I have the script I want you to check out." Now, me being who I was, already kind of having my background and my platform set with boxing being very successful, you can imagine the amount of inboxes I get about people having these ideas. So I'm like, all right, here's just another person. But he checked out. I watched his film. I checked, his credential. He checked out. So I'm like, okay, go on. We had a phone call. Then he eventually drove up to Providence, Rhode Island. He let me read his first script that he had, which was basically just the bare bones of this story. He had just kind of started finding out about missing and murdered Indigenous women and really kind of diving into it. So he wanted to make a film about a woman who lost a sibling. The more and more he got to know me, we immediately clicked being, perfectionist Virgos, number one, both being, we're not the only child, we have siblings. Being biracial was really, really big. And just his whole artistic approach and his sensitivity and his in-depth research on this really sensitive subject, from number one, not being Indigenous, number two, not being a woman, or not really knowing much about the North Woodland Eastern tribes or what our background is. He did a lot of really good research from before he even got to know me. So, he started getting to know my background, my tribe, and the more he got to know me, he works really well with a creative partner. So he asked me if, I'd like to help with the creative process of writing this story. The more we got to know each other, the more he got to know my story, the more he started having me do goofy acting things. At first, we just really hit it off, and he knew it was really important for me to get this awareness out, what I've already done with boxing, missing and murdered Indigenous women, or just being a mixed Indigenous two-spirit woman doing something that you don't normally see us being represented with my boxing. So it started in 2017, and here we are now. That's really kind of how it manifested.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I totally understand from the media side of things what it must be like for someone who's as popular as you are, that that your DMs must just be ridiculous, and you might like, okay, is this real? Is this spam? Is this somebody looking for something else? And then every now and then there might be like a nugget, like in this case, where it's actually true. It's like somebody really genuinely has a project that they think you would be good for.
Yeah, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and because of the boxing career I had, where I had to pretty much be self-made, I'm pretty, I'd like to consider myself a pretty good judge of character, and kind of can seed out the bullshit, pretty quickly. So it's really, really such a blessing. And oddly enough, people always ask me, did you think about acting? I have done some, theater work with my mom and like some church plays here and there, but I'm very artistic. I always wanted to get into acting. And a week prior to when he slid up in my DM, I was standing there and I'm just like, I really want to think outside the box, outside of boxing. I always have plan A through Z. I was like, I don't know how to get into acting, but if it's meant for me, universe, it will find me. And a week later, literally, he hit me up.
There you go.
The power of manifestation, man. I'm telling you guys, it's real. It's real.
Yeah, put it out there and see what happens. And in this case, the universe came calling and said, here you go.
I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to me, because I think I've had the pleasure of talking to so many different guests over the last year during this pandemic lockdown time. And it's interesting people's perception of people like yourself being a world-class athlete. They might think, well, why would she be acting? Or if you're, I don't know, a musician, or if you're doing photography or whatever your thing is, maybe you love to cook. And some people just like to put people into silos and categories because I think it's easy for them to digest what's going on instead of like, this is a person. They have lots of interests. And you just said it, that you're an artistic person. So you wanted to get into acting and you wanted to make this happen. And here you are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully well, hopefully it opens up other doors. And I just, I'm here in this lifetime for this blink, so I might as well make the best of it, especially if I have the talents for it. I might as well honor what the creative given me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I noticed when I was watching the film is that I honestly, full transparency, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know your boxing background at all. So I'm watching you as an actor in this film, and I'm like, who is this person? Because you have a screen presence, there's definitely something about you. So I'm like, in the back of my head as I was watching, I'm like, okay, either she's a real boxer or she trained for a long time as an actor to portray a boxer in this film. So when I started looking through, I said, oh, okay, this makes sense now to me because of your lengthy professional background.
Well, that's awesome, though, because, people have said that. I've heard that a number of times. Well, I didn't know if you were a really well-trained actor that learned how to box or just a really good boxer that learned how to act. I'm like, act's actually a compliment. So I appreciate that perspective, seriously.
Yeah, no, again, that's the God's honest truth. When I was watching, it's like, she's really good. And it's hard to have a presence. Some people might have been trained in acting for years on end, and they might be really good at that craft, but they don't have that presence that comes through. You automatically have it. And folks, if you haven't had a chance to see the film, when you do, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. As soon as your character comes on screen, it's just your eyes just go right to you. So that's like an innate gift that you have.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and which tells me you're going to have some other opportunities in acting. I mean, it just has to happen, and you've already put it out there to the universe. And if this is the first result, I mean, there's going to be many, many more coming your way.
Hey, man, there might be a Marvel character available. Echo.
Yeah, there you go. Put it out there. Like I've always said, stranger things have happened sometimes when things happen. But I'm also curious about with this film. So you guys were working on this for a while, and so was it kind of off and on, or like, can you even give like a scope of what was the timeline like to get this film started and finished?
I mean, like I said, the initial was he reached out to me in the summer, around the summer of 2017, and oddly enough, I had just lost my brother, one of my brothers, to brain cancer that February. So when he talked to me, I was in a very vulnerable state. I was out of work due to just emotional stress, and he brought his camera and he just was asking me about things, and I was just, I'm one of the realest people you ever meet. I do my best to just portray just realness. What you see here is what you're gonna get. You know what I mean? So there was something that he saw, and I actually was in training when he came up to Rhode Island, and I'm like, dude, look, I got in like an hour, then I got to go to the gym, but you're more than welcome to come with me. So he came with me, came to my dirty, dingy, yet grimy, full of champion gym, Big Six Boxing Academy, my family. And he, as a filmmaker, just saw me getting there. I was sparring a bunch of guys, just doing me. And I really didn't see what he saw until we really sat down and we started dissecting it. So it was off and on because, again, he's a TV director as well. Yes, he takes jobs. He's here and there. But this was his passion project. So I had time to really unpack a lot of things, healing with losing my brother, trying to balance work and boxing, really not being where I needed to be in boxing. As far as I never had a promoter, I never had a manager. My first 3 world titles were in middleweight. I have the WBC, the IBA, and the UBF with no manager, no trainer at times, no promoter at all. So my boxing career was a little rocky, but I would never change it because I would not have the knowledge and the respect and the humbleness of where I am now. I guarantee that. So it was a pretty off and on timeline. We'd get together for a couple of days on end, talk about it. We'd email, he'd write another script. I'd dissect it. I'd say, this works. This doesn't really work as far as from my perspective on the native end or on the boxing side, because there's so many layers to this movie. And there's probably, like with all movies, I'm sure there's, like 10 different scripts. When when we had some time on our hands, he would actually have a friend of his that was an actor. We'd go to his friend's cabin in the woods for like 4 or 5 days and have like an acting, writing, creative boot camp where we'd have the script. I'd practice some scenes to try to get used to the emotional aspect and just the shooting aspect and creative. We just create and work, and just like you do with painting, just like you do with any kind of art, just like you do with a band of practice. And once we really, really honed in on what kind of story you want to tell, what messages you want to convey, because in the process of this, he was very, very aware of how sensitive this sex trafficking content is, and missing and murdered Indigenous women is, especially not being a woman or Indigenous. So he did his due diligence. You know what I mean? He took my own personal experiences and my perspective into consideration, and he did hell of a lot of work to really get these stories conveyed, but in the right way, because this could have went south, it could have went left, it could have took a couple of turns where those messages could have been not accepted. I mean, and then to try to do it in like 86 minutes is really, it was a challenge. But fast forward all the way to early 2019, where we really started honing down in the characters, the shooting, and he knew that just like my boxing, I want to be the best that I can be. I want the best coaches and everything else. So he took it upon himself to hook me up with one of the greatest souls I've ever met, an acting coach, Sheila Gray. And she really, really fine-tuned what both her and Joseph saw in me, and really explained to me how to access those emotions in this very dark, very, 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 very triggering role, because it wasn't a comedy. I didn't jump in, as a comedy cameo as a fighter just to hop in a movie. I had to play the lead, and this was a very diverse character that you had to dive into, get past her physical presence to really feel what we were trying to, the sorrow, the sadness, the sense of loss. So she really helped me understand and taught me how to tune in and tune out. That was something I learned, thank God, because, people in Hollywood and actors and creative people, if you don't know how to pull yourself away, sometimes you can really get lost. And especially being so close to the person that I am, the character, I mean, down to her name is Kali. You know what I mean? Even her last name is part of one of my Native American given names, and she's a boxer, and she has, there's a lot of things. She has a sibling. I have a sibling. I've lost a sibling, even though she wasn't younger. I mean, he wasn't younger, but to be able to tune in and tune out, he really took it upon himself and really kicked it up a few notches, and put me in like a whole actor boot camp. She broke me down and then built me back up. And I was going to do this role by any means necessary. It was really important for me to tell this story the best I could and get this story out there, because it's a necessary story. Even if it wasn't me telling this story, it's a necessary story to be told. So I just wanted to make sure, just like with my boxing, I was prepared and I could do the best I could. I put everything into this.
Wow. The first thing, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you just described that Joseph really collaborated with you. It could have been something where he's like, I have these ideas, and maybe kind of half listening to you and then just going back to what he wants to do. But he truly, like you just said, that isn't a woman. It doesn't have an Indigenous background. So he's trying to figure out, give me your input, and then also doing his own homework on top of that to make this thing as authentic as possible so he gets it right. Because you're right, a few wrong turns, and this movie could have went all kinds of different ways, and the messages would have been lost. You may have even ended up with a poor film overall. That's really telling that he was willing to really collaborate with you. And it's also really great that as you were talking, I'm really getting the sense that your boxing background really helped you with the mentality of attacking this role and this film, that everything you did in the ring set you up basically for I'm guessing anything else that you do in life. So if you choose that you're going to do this, then you're giving it 110%, and you're going to be prepared, and you're going to work your ass off, and you're going to make sure everything's happening at the highest level possible, because you won't accept anything less.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly when people ask me if it was hard to transfer. Honestly, no, because the same type of work ethic that I have with boxing, and like you said it, with anything I do, if I'm tying my shoe, I'm going to tie the best shoe ever, that has to do with that I'm an obsessive Virgo and like a perfectionist. But yeah, I mean, anything I do, I feel like if I'm here, we get taught as Indigenous people, if you have a gift, you're not supposed to hold it for yourself. You're supposed to give it. You know what I mean? That's your medicine. My medicine in this lifetime is fighting for my people, whether it's in a ring, representing a mass collective of people, a whole nation of people, or if it's speaking to a community of young people that may have a really high rate of suicide in their community, and I can speak and attest to that from personal experience. Or now, whether it's storytelling, I mean, Indigenous people, that's how we've passed on our traditions, our heritages, our stories, our creation stories with storytelling. And now being in, you know, the 2021 and even way before that, movies are a way of telling stories, and also telling our stories are a way of healing for us. The more we can talk about it, the more we can tell people our stories, no matter how good or bad they are, it's a form of healing. So I'm here for it all. You know, of course, these types of stories are what I want to tell, but, you know, aside from my personal career, obviously, but there's a bigger purpose for my fighting. It's not just for Instagram likes. It's not just to get, you know, belts. That's great. But when I get emails and inboxes from parents to tell me, you know, my daughter was on the verge of suicide, but then she saw your fight on HBO and she saw you were mixed Indigenous like her, and you changed her whole perspective. That to me is worth more. I don't care about any belts. I don't care about any wins, but if I can motivate some kind of change or motivate my people to realize that we're relevant and we're so powerful, and our ancestors did not do what they did in vain, and we're here, and I'm proud. I used to not be so proud of being mixed. I'm like, oh, you know, I should be full. People probably think I'm fake. I know the Black Indians are, you know, not accepted. I used to be so ashamed. My hair is crazy curly. I'm so proud of it now, because that's just a testament of how powerful and how much our ancestors fought and how hard they fought. I don't care about no blood quantum. I know who I am. And it took a long time for me to get here. And I still got a lot of work to do, and everybody's a work in progress. But just to be able to be blessed to tell this story, and it's amazing to see the reviews and talk to people like yourself who get the film without even having to say anything. They dissected the film, and me and Joseph had such a good, you know, a connection that we were able to get all these themes, and we didn't have to say anything. We just showed the movie, and people are telling us what we were hoping we put out. That's, to me, also, I don't care if we never win an award. I don't care. The core of it and the reason, the purpose behind it is what is really, really what we really care about.
That's fantastic. And it's also really, really heartwarming to hear that for you, it's about representation. It's about, if a young person's watching one of your fights or watching this film, they can be like, hey, there's someone like me doing this. I'm Asian American. I grew up in a mostly Caucasian suburb here in Seattle. And so I didn't see people like me in metal bands. I didn't see people like me around me, basically, even at school. I didn't see it. It's like I'm one of two Asians there for the longest time. And now here we are in 2021, I see things all over the place. And for me, it makes me feel really good, because it's like, it's not just me. It's like, look at all these other folks that are around doing this. And that also could mean, for all I know, someone's watching this right now saying, hey, there's some Asian interviewer talking to a biracial Indigenous woman about filmmaking and boxing. I mean, you just never know where it's going to spread, that ripple. And it's extremely powerful. I used to work as a teacher for a long period of time, and I also worked in some nonprofits locally. So I worked with a lot of gang-involved youth. And so my heart's always there. I'm always trying to help people. That's never going to change. It doesn't matter till the day I die. That's a piece of who I am. And it kind of bleeds into, it bleeds into everything that I do, because that's who I am. It's what I believe in. And it sounds like it's a real similar thing for yourself in terms of everything that you come across. If this is who you are at the core, so then that's just going to be the foundation for everything that you put your hand to.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. And I'm just curious from the film side of things. What was the toughest scene to film?
I mean, we did shoot in Buffalo, New York in the middle of November, December, so it was freezing. And for whatever odd reason, my character never found a North Face or bubble coat to wear. She had a swishy jacket and some thing in her head. So, I mean, that was tough. But, man, it was just the context of it was pretty tough all the time. And like I said before, a lot of things we pulled were from my real life. You know, that scene with her mother was tough because that is a real type of situation I had to come across in my real life with my real life mom. You know what I mean? So that tension there, the not accepting, or even not even just my mom, or just not being accepted as Native or Indigenous from other Native Americans who aren't mixed. That is probably the most racism I've ever faced. I faced racism from every race you can even, because nobody ever knows what I am. They're like, what the heck is that? So, you know, but I've received the most hatred and racism from other natives. So even though, you know, the other, you know, being two-spirit with my mom, that scene was really tough, but to sit there and be the mixed child and not the pure one, not the fair one, and her sister was the one that was missing, and I had to sit here and like, you know, it was really tough because it was real to me, you know, sitting here trying to get approval from her mom was me sitting there trying to get approval from other natives that aren't mixed. And, you know, the whole anti-Black in the native community is insane. You can be mixed and white passing and be accepted, but if you're mixed with anything else, i.e. Cape Verdean, Black, Afro-Native, if you mix with Jamaican or anything else, it seems as a negative. And I know across the board with other races that is similar. You know, if you're mixed with anything else, you're not pure. So I'm not Black enough. I'm not Cape Verdean enough. I'm not Native enough. So that scene was a lot more for me. It was tough, but like I said, the whole process was kind of cathartic, you know, getting through stuff and seeing it right in front of me and having to force myself right through it.
Wow. Yeah. That's, thanks for sharing that. Cause I can see that scene distinctly in my head now that you're talking about in the film. And again, for people out there, when you get a chance to see it, now you know all these parallels that are going on for you as a person and as an actor. And so to do that time and time again and do retakes, and then just the subject matter is so serious and rightfully so. It's something that needs to be said. The story needs to be told. It needs to be told more than once, actually. That's got to be something that you have to put everything out there. There's no way to kind of like do it in half measures, because then it's not going to look real on screen at all. So that means you have to go to a pretty personal place to get that out.
Thank you, Sheila Gray, for beating me up. I mean, it was, you know, acting, I have a huge appreciation for actors and artists out there. A lot of people, just excluding myself when I was younger, think it's, oh, you're just a good liar. No, you're telling them some kind of truth. There's some kind of truth there. I mean, you just have to pick whoever you're speaking to in that scene, and you got to stick to your choice, is what I've learned through acting coaching. Stick to your choice and just trust in your choice. So whoever you're talking to, it could be a Tuesday, could have been the guy who cut you off on your way to set, and you're supposed to be angry. Now you got to be angry. You know what I mean? So it's really, I found, and I work with youth as well. I've been working in group homes back in Rhode Island since 2009, and I deal with ages 12 to 21, teenage girls. That is my specialty. So you can imagine the types of situations and types of beautiful little souls that I've run into. And we get the most at-risk youth in the state. And I, going through this whole acting, I'm like, you know what? I want to put together some type of program where they can learn these types of acting, what you might call it, these exercises, and kind of almost tell whoever, you know, whatever happened to them or whatever they're fighting, to kind of get through, because it was really interesting to kind of work through that. So it's one of those things I in the future want to explore, to try to like therapeutically help people. It's really, art is really therapeutic.
Yeah, it's very true. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the places I used to work for about 10 years, I reached out to a performance artist. I said, would you be interested in coming in and working with some of the students? And when they found out the groups of students that I worked with, they were kind of hesitant, to be honest, about that. And I said, these are 12 and 13 and 14-year-old kids like anybody else. At their core, that's what they are.
Yep.
And so if you approach it that way with what you've done with all these other camps, you'll see the same success from these guys that they deserve, and they need the opportunity. So we tried it out on a trial basis, and I couldn't get her to leave. she loved it. And
it's a special, I mean, everybody remembers being a teenager. It's such a whiff from like 10 to like 18. It's so weird, especially for young girls. I mean, it's just such a weird time. So nobody ever wants to work with them. But of course, I always take the road less traveled. So I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. So I love it. It's tough. It's hard. But going into that, I want to be who I wish I had when I was that age, because I went through some stuff. So that's usually what my mentality is. I still talk to the girls I had back in 2010 now. You know what I mean? I have my little soul tribe, my little kids, my little daughters, but it's gratifying just to see those, there's not always success stories, but when there is, and when you just get that one kid that keeps that one note that you wrote back in 2015 and they're like 22, because that really happened to me, and you just so happen to live above their best friend and they show you the note that's all crumpled up, those little things, man, just to make a difference, that's really what I strive for.
That's beautiful. And I totally can relate to what you just said, when it's those little small things that come back your way and you're so grateful when they do, because a lot of times they go off into the world and you don't really know what happened to some of these young people. But if it comes back your way and you're like, I still remember, I won't take too much longer here, but I just
no problem. You got time.
Cool. I just remember that I had a student who was a 7th grader, and he put me through my paces. We went back and forth when he was with me. And then about 4 years later, I was at a community center doing a check-in on somebody else, and I just hear this, Mr. S? And I'm kind of like, okay, I turn around. I know it's one of my former students, and I look, and there's like this guy, he's like 6'4". I don't know who he is. And I had that look on my face, kind of like, I don't know. And he's like, you don't remember me, do you? And when I started talking to him, and he said, how about this? And because he used to sit there with his hoodie and put his hood over his head and kind of be like this. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did in class. So he did that there in the gym. I'm like, then I knew exactly.
I know you. I remember that hood. Yep. That's awesome.
I remember you. And so we're talking and catching up, and he was back in school and he had a part-time job and his family was doing better. And it was just, but the thing that was great about it was that he was saying, you know what, you're one of the people that put me on this path. And that's what that meant the world to me, just to hear that I had some level of impact, no matter how small or how big, that I had some impact on you, and it helped fuel you into a better direction. And awesome, I'll never forget that. And obviously, you probably have stories just like that, because you just mentioned one.
Yeah. It's just really awesome. I mean, like I said, a lot of people, do things just to, take a look. I'm giving food to a homeless person. The things that people don't see, and then things that are really close to you don't even want to share. Like, that's just, I don't want anybody to ruin that moment for me. So it just, it just means so much, because I can relate to being there. I always say feelings and emotions are not prejudice. You can be so distraught and sad about something. Look at a 3-year-old, like the favorite toy broke and their whole world crashes down. But you can get somebody that's older, their whole world goes crashing down because they lost their job, they're getting the divorce, but they have the same they have that same frequency of just distraught and sadness. It has no prejudice. It doesn't speak a certain languages. Everybody feels that way. So I can relate to a lot of these younger people, even older adults that I've worked with, that have been somewhere, whether it's high or low, and had to fight back to get to a better place. So it's awesome just to hear those little stories of success stories.
I'm back.
I kept it going.
No, I appreciate that. And one thing I wanted to ask before we kind of get to wrapping this up is that, did you get a chance to see the film in person with an audience?
I did. I was actually at the in-person premiere at Tribeca at Hudson Yards, and I don't have anything to compare a world premiere to, because this is my first go round. But they did a tremendous job. Even if it was outside, the sound quality was amazing. There was a big audience there, and you could hear a rat piss on cotton. It was so quiet because people were so engaged in it, and it was amazing to see it all polished up, because I was a huge part of the editing process. And through COVID, we had so much time to kind of go back and forth, which was a blessing in hindsight. But yeah, I was like looking at the audience, looking at that. It was just so like surreal. I'm like, oh my God, they're watching me. Oh man, it was just like awesome to see different people's reaction, and especially the ending.
Yeah, and we won't spoil it out there for those who haven't had a chance to see it yet. And hopefully a wide audience gets a chance to see this film. It really deserves it. And I hope that it gets put in every freaking theater and home soon.
It will. Believe it, it will. It's going to go, and it's going to be where it needs to be. That's been our hope and this whole process, that no expectation. I just know that it's going to go where it needs to go.
Yeah, and just to wrap things up, so what do you have coming up? Is there anything in the pipeline? Is there any scripts that you're looking at? Are you developing your own? Because you had a strong hand in this film. Is there anything else that's kind of on the horizon?
I'm always thinking of ideas. My mind's always going. But now that I've gone through the process of actually creating something, I don't know how to write a script per se. But me and Joe we always joked about, like, dude, we always got to work together. So we've talked about a couple ideas already. people have thrown sequels out to us, and I'm like, or like a prequel or like a series. So like creatively, I would love to create something else, either with Joseph or myself. I always have ideas running, but something currently, no. Through the pandemic, through COVID, I had a chance to do a bunch of audition tapes because, again, as not a trained actress, really didn't know. I didn't have to do an audition tape for this. So I just been really just kind of taking what comes, getting, those chops, and just like working out, just trying to work on things that are not my norm. Because obviously I any genre, obviously action, I love action or horror or something, but things that I'm not used to doing. I've been trying to practice. We have some ideas on some things coming up as far as acting. But since this movie is dropped, I know it's going to help a lot of casting directors actually see what I can do and what I'm capable of, because it's kind of hard to pitch somebody an unknown. But with this, hopefully I'll be known. And as far as boxing goes, I've been in training camp for the last month. I have a title defense of my super lightweight WBA world title coming up in August. Opponent not to be announced yet, and also hopefully there'll be some more news about that fight. Excuse me. I also helped train Ebony Bridges. She is from Australia and she trains here in Philadelphia, so she stays with us right now. She's the blonde bomber. She just fought Shannon Courtney for the vacant WBA bantamweight title. She lost that fight, but she gained so much, and she's such a wonderful person, a great fighter, a marketing genius, and I love working with her. So myself, my fiance, also my boxing manager, Brian Cohen, we train her. She's fighting in the UK August 7th. So we'll be over there. So I'll be in between my fighting and training and traveling and all that fun stuff. I'm staying busy.
It sounds like you have a lot of amazing things coming up, and I totally can see you. During the course of this interview, I can definitely see you moving in a direction where it's your brand of whatever you're doing. If you have a production house for films, if it's going to be obviously with boxing and athletics, if it could be, all these other kind of things that tie into either of those fields, or it could be some brand new field. Maybe you want to do something with your background with working with youth, and you start your own movement that starts picking up around the country. I've had the pleasure of talking to so many different film-related folks, and a lot of them have those kind of things, and that's what they kind of work themselves towards. The difference for me is that you have the drive. Your drive is relentless.
I already see it. I see it. I've always dreamed of having I call it a res tour. Like I go to reservation to reservation, giving these. I've gone to quite a few communities and reservations doing motivational speaking, just basically telling my story, but to kind of tie it into now this new journey with acting. And I want to start a program, especially directed with missing and murdered Indigenous women, some kind of boxing class or like some kind of something that we can help our youth and our adults to defend themselves. I know how to fight, when it comes down to it, maybe it came down to the person being abducted just couldn't defend themselves. So it's something I can offer on that end, on a therapeutic end. Native Americans, Indigenous people are the top leading of homelessness, suicide, depression, obesity. The list goes on and on. Murder is the cause of death for Indigenous women from like ages 3. That's like the top cause of death. That's not right. I mean, how far would you go to defend and stop something like that for your people from who you come from? So, I mean, the sky is not the limit. I mean, what I can't imagine will happen. So I have the drive, you said it, whatever resources, talents. My mother named me Mikwinanog, which means many feathers, many talents. So as many talents as I can hone in on and to give back and to do what I'm meant to do in this little wink of a lifetime, I'm here for it all.
I wish you every success with everything that you do. I would love if we ever have a chance to do a part 2 of this to kind of see where you're at with things, maybe post-fight, post-film, whatever you have coming up next. I like things to be the beginning of something, not just a one and done. Again, thank you so much for taking the time today, Kali, and I wish you every success with this film. Again, people out there, catch the fair one. That's what it's called. Go watch the trailer a million times until you get a chance to see the actual film, or go out to the online platforms when eventually it'll be available. And again, Kali, thank you so much for taking the time, and stay safe over there on the East Coast.
Yes, Tabutni, which means thank you, or Katabatush, which also means thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you. This is not the last time, so I love speaking to other people, like-minded people. So anytime, just let me know. I will make the time.
I will DM you.
Fly to my DM. That's how it started. Slide in the DM.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
No problem.
Okay,
Akine.
bye-bye.
Bye.